I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, I would eventually earn my place in my husband's family. For 6 years, I gave them everything: 18-hour days, sleepless nights, and a loyalty so absolute it erased my own life. I carried their company through crises they never even noticed, smiling through exhaustion while they called me family in public and replaceable in private. Then my father died. He wasn't a powerful man. He didn't own buildings or sit on boards. He was just my dad, the man who raised me, fixed broken things with his hands, and waited patiently for calls I kept postponing. When I asked my husband's family for 4 days off to bury him, they didn't offer condolences. They laughed. "Choose work or family," they said, like grief was a negotiation. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I chose, and that choice changed everything. My name is Emma Walker, and for a long time, I believed that being indispensable meant being protected. I married into the Harrison family 6 years ago. To the outside world, they were powerful, respectable, admired. Harrison Group was one of the fastest-growing logistics corporations in the region. Clean branding, confident leadership, and a reputation for family values. That phrase appeared everywhere, on their website, in investor meetings, even in internal emails. What people didn't see was how that empire actually ran. It ran on my back. I was officially titled Director of Operations, but that title didn't capture what I really did. I was the one who woke up at 4:30 a.m. to coordinate shipments across time zones. I was the one who stayed in the office until security turned off half the lights, fixing problems no one else wanted to touch. When contracts were on the verge of collapse, my phone rang. When systems failed, I didn't sleep until they were rebuilt. 18-hour days weren't a phase. They were my normal. I learned how to eat dinner out of vending machines and how to smile through meetings while my vision blurred from exhaustion. My calendar didn't have weekends. Holidays were just slower email days. Even on my birthday, I answered calls from conference rooms while my husband's family toasted champagne at some resort I'd helped them afford. They called me driven. They called me reliable. They never called me tired. My father-in-law, Robert Harrison, liked to pat my shoulder during meetings and say, "Emma is very hardworking. She keeps things moving. Very hardworking. Not brilliant. Not irreplaceable. Just useful." My mother-in-law, Linda, praised me differently. "You're such a good wife," she'd say with a tight smile. "Not every woman would sacrifice this much for the family." Sacrifice. That word followed me everywhere. My husband, Daniel, benefited the most and noticed the least. He liked the lifestyle my work provided. The penthouse apartment, the vacations, the status. When I came home late, he'd glance up from his phone and ask, "Long day again?" I'd nod. He'd nod back. And that would be the end of it. Sometimes he joked about me in front of others. "Emma doesn't need rest," he'd laugh. "She runs on discipline." Everyone laughed, including me. Because in that family, weakness was dangerous. If you showed it, you were quietly pushed aside. I watched it happen to others: managers who burned out, employees who asked for flexibility, people who dared to put their personal lives first. They didn't get fired loudly. They just disappeared. So I learned to endure. I told myself it was temporary. That once the next merger was done, once the next expansion stabilized, once the next crisis passed, I'd finally slow down. I believed that if I gave enough time, energy, loyalty, I would eventually be seen as more than an asset, as family. What I didn't understand then was a simple truth. In the Harrison family, the more you gave, the less human you became. And by the time my father died, I had already given them everything. The call came on a Tuesday night, just after 10 p.m. I was still in the office, alone as usual. The building had gone quiet hours earlier, the kind of quiet that makes even the hum of the air conditioner sound loud. My laptop screen glowed in front of me, lines of numbers blurring together after another endless day. I remember rubbing my eyes and telling myself I would leave in 5 minutes. I always said that. Then my phone lit up. Mark. My younger brother never called that late unless something was wrong. My chest tightened before I even answered. "Emma," he said, and his voice was already breaking. "You need to sit down." I did. Slowly. My hand tightened around the phone. "It's Dad," he continued. He passed away about an hour ago." For a moment, everything stopped. The numbers on my screen froze. The ticking of the wall clock sounded impossibly loud. I stared straight ahead, not really seeing anything, while his words echoed in my head again and again. Dad is gone. My father is gone. I had known this day would come. His health had been declining for years, and every call from Mark carried a little more worry than the last. Still, nothing prepares you for the finality of it. The knowledge that there would be no more next time, no more postponed visits, no more unanswered calls you could return later. I'll come home, I said automatically. I'll book the earliest flight. Mark exhaled shakily. Okay, I'll start making arrangements. He would have wanted you here. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time without moving. My hands felt cold. My throat burned, but no tears came yet. I thought of my father, Thomas Walker, in his small house in Ohio. A quiet man, a patient man. The kind of father who never complained when I canceled visits or shortened phone calls because of work. Just do your best, Emmy, he always said. I'm proud of you. The guilt hit me all at once, sharp and heavy. I packed up my bag that same night. Not for the airport, but for the meeting I knew I had to have first. I stepped out of the office and dialed Robert Harrison as I walked through the empty hallway. He answered on the third ring. Robert, I said carefully, keeping my voice steady. My father passed away tonight. There was a pause. Just long enough for me to expect something, condolences maybe. Even a polite acknowledgement. Instead, he cleared his throat. I see. I need to go home, I continued. Just 4 days. I'll make sure everything is covered. Another pause. I could hear someone else in the background. Linda's voice, faint but unmistakable. Then a short laugh. Emma, Robert said, his tone suddenly businesslike. This is a very sensitive period for the company. My stomach dropped. I understand, I replied, gripping my phone tighter. That's why I'm asking now. 4 days, that's all. There was no sympathy in his voice when he answered. We'll discuss it tomorrow, he said. This isn't something we can decide emotionally. The line went dead. I stood there in the hallway, staring at my dark reflection in the glass wall. My father had just died, and already, I could feel the weight of expectations closing in around me. For the first time, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. What if they didn't let me go? And worse, what if I had to choose? The meeting was scheduled for the next morning at 9. I barely slept that night. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying my father's voice in my head. I'm proud of you. Every time I closed my eyes, guilt washed over me like a slow tide. I should have gone home more. I should have fought harder for time. I should have been there. By the time I arrived at the office, I was running on pure adrenaline. Robert and Linda Harrison were already seated in the conference room when I walked in. Perfect posture, perfect expressions. My husband Daniel sat beside them, scrolling through his phone as if this were just another routine meeting. Sit down, Emma, Robert said, gesturing to the chair across from them. I did. I won't take much of your time, I began. My father's funeral is this weekend. I've arranged coverage for all ongoing operations. I need 4 days off. I said it calmly, clearly, like someone who believed the answer would be reasonable. Linda tilted her head and smiled a thin, sharp smile that never reached her eyes. 4 days? She repeated. During a quarter-end transition? Yes, I replied. My father just died. There it was. Out in the open. The words felt heavy in the room, but no one reacted the way I expected. Robert leaned back in his chair. Emma, he said, everyone loses people. That's life. Daniel finally looked up. Babe, he added quietly, maybe this isn't the best time. I turned to him, disbelief tightening my chest. Daniel, it's my dad, he sighed, rubbing his temples. I know, but the company needs you right now. The company. Linda let out a soft laugh. You're being emotional, she said. That's understandable. But emotions can't interfere with responsibility. My hands curled into fists under the table. I've never let emotions interfere with my work, I said. Not once. I'm asking for 4 days. Robert's expression hardened. And I'm telling you that 4 days could cost us millions. Silence stretched between us. Then Linda said the words that would echo in my head for weeks. Choose work or family. She said it lightly, casually, like she was offering advice about a career move, not forcing a woman to choose between grief and obedience. I stared at her, waiting for anyone to say something else. Daniel didn't. Emma, Robert continued, if you walk away right now, the board will have questions. People may start doubting your commitment. Are you threatening my job? I asked quietly. I'm reminding you of consequences, he replied. My heart began to pound. Not from fear, but from something sharper. Anger, clarity. I have given this company 6 years of my life, I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts. I have missed holidays, birthdays, anniversaries. I have worked 18 hours a day without complaint. And now, when my father dies, you're telling me I don't deserve 4 days? Linda's smile vanished. Don't dramatize this. Daniel finally spoke again, his voice tense. Emma, don't make this bigger than it needs to be. I turned fully toward him. Bigger? I repeated. My father is dead. He looked uncomfortable, embarrassed. That doesn't mean you throw everything away, he said. Something inside me went very still. Robert stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. You have a choice, he said firmly. If you leave without authorization, HR will respond accordingly. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed on the table. Human resources. I didn't answer it. I didn't need to. I already understood. This was never about 4 days. It was about control. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping softly against the floor. I won't argue, I said. I'll give you my answer soon. No one tried to stop me as I walked out of the room. Back at my desk, I finally read the HR message. It was short, formal, chilling. Unauthorized leave may result in disciplinary action, including demotion or termination. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Work or family? They thought this choice would break me. They didn't realize it was about to free me. I didn't go home that night. After the HR message appeared on my screen, I just sat there, motionless, long after the office lights dimmed. The building felt hollow, like a shell that had already lost its purpose. For 6 years, this place had been my entire world. Now it felt like a cage I could finally see. I thought about my father. I thought about the last time we spoke. He had sounded tired but still tried to joke. Don't work too hard, Emmy, he said. You only get one life. I closed my eyes and felt something inside me settle. At 2:17 a.m., I opened my laptop and booked the first flight to Ohio. No hesitation, no second guessing. The confirmation email popped up on the screen, and with it came a strange sense of calm. The decision had been made. Before I left, I did one more thing. I opened a blank document and stared at it for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I had written thousands of reports, contracts, and crisis plans for this company, but this document felt heavier than all of them combined. To the board of directors, I hereby resign from my position, effective immediately. That was it. No explanations, no apologies. When I clicked send, my hands trembled not from fear, but from the realization that I had just crossed a line I could never step back over. I packed my bag quietly. My laptop, a change of clothes, my passport. Nothing else mattered. As I walked out of the building, the security guard nodded at me, unaware that this would be the last time I'd leave as part of the Harrison Empire. The night air outside was cold and sharp, cutting through my exhaustion. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to the next task. I wasn't checking my phone every 30 seconds. I just walked. My phone started vibrating almost immediately. Daniel. Robert. Linda. I didn't answer. By the time I reached my apartment, my voicemail was full. Angry messages. Confused ones. Orders disguised as concern. Emma, what are you doing? Daniel demanded, in one message. Call us back immediately, Robert said in another. You're being reckless, Linda warned. Reckless. I stared at my suitcase as I packed, hands moving on autopilot. This apartment, this beautiful, expensive space, had never felt like home. It was furnished with things chosen by someone else, paid for with sacrifices no one acknowledged. At the bottom of a drawer, I found an old watch. My father had given it to me when I graduated college. Just so you remember where you came from, he said back then. I slipped it onto my wrist and zipped my suitcase shut. At the airport, surrounded by strangers and fluorescent lights, the weight of everything finally hit me. My father was gone. My marriage was cracking. My career, at least the version I'd known, was over. And yet, beneath the grief, there was something else. Relief. When the plane lifted off, I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the city lights fade into darkness. No more meetings. No more threats disguised as loyalty. No more pretending that devotion could replace dignity. I whispered quietly, so no one could hear. I'm coming home, Dad. For the first time in years, I wasn't choosing what was expected of me. I was choosing what mattered. I stayed in Ohio longer than I planned. The funeral passed in a blur of quiet voices, folded hands, and the sound of earth hitting wood, soft, final, unforgettable. I stood beside my brother Mark, feeling like a piece of my life had been buried along with my father. He would have wanted it simple. No grand speeches. No display. Just dignity. After everyone left, we remained by the grave for a long time without speaking. I should have been here more, I finally said. Mark shook his head. He knew you loved him. He just wished you loved yourself a little more too. Those words stayed with me. In the days that followed, we sorted through my father's small house. Every object felt heavier than it should have: a chipped mug, a stack of old receipts, a toolbox worn smooth by decades of use. My father had lived quietly, modestly. He never complained about money, never talked about the future in grand terms. That was why the phone call from the lawyer caught me completely off guard. I'm calling regarding your father's will, the man said. Could you and your brother come in tomorrow? I assumed it was routine. The house. Maybe a few savings accounts. I almost told him it could wait. It couldn't. The lawyer's office was small and unremarkable. Mark and I sat side by side, hands folded, both of us bracing for a conversation about closure, not surprises. But then the lawyer adjusted his glasses and said, Your father left an estate valued at approximately $900,000. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. That's not possible, I said quietly. He was a mechanic. The lawyer nodded. He was also very careful. He saved. He invested. Slowly, consistently, over decades. My chest tightened. He never touched the money, the lawyer continued. He wanted it for you. Both of you. He instructed that it be divided equally. I felt dizzy. My father, the man who wore the same coat for 10 years, who fixed his own appliances, who told me not to worry about him, had been quietly building a safety net for us. Why didn't he tell us? I whispered. The lawyer looked at me gently. He said he didn't want it to change how you lived. He wanted it to be freedom. Freedom. I closed my eyes, tears finally slipping through. After the meeting, Mark and I sat in the car for a long time without starting the engine. He worked himself to the bone, Mark said, and still thought about our future. That night, over a simple dinner in my father's kitchen, I told Mark everything: the refusal, the laughter, the words, choose work or family, the HR threat, my resignation. He listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with every sentence. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. Emma, there's something you need to know. I looked at him. What? Harrison Group is under investigation, he said. Federal level, financial misconduct, labor violations. They're missing one thing. My heart skipped. What thing? Someone on the inside, he replied. Someone who understands their systems, their reports, their lies. The room felt suddenly smaller. I thought about the late nights, the numbers that never quite added up, the instructions not to ask questions, the pressure to adjust reports without explanations. They didn't just deny you time to bury your father, Mark continued. They've been hurting a lot of people. I wrapped my arms around myself, shaking not with fear, but with clarity. My father had worked his entire life with honesty, quiet integrity. He left me more than money. He left me a choice. And for the first time, that choice wasn't between work and family. It was between silence and truth. I looked at Mark and nodded slowly. Tell me what they need, I said. The storm was coming. And this time, I wasn't afraid. I went back. Not because I missed the power. Not because I missed the money. And certainly not because I missed them. I went back because silence had already cost me my father. When I returned to Chicago, I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car across the street from the Harrison Group headquarters for nearly an hour, watching employees walk in and out of the glass building I had helped build. It looked the same, polished, confident, untouchable. But I knew better now. Inside that building were lies stacked neatly behind polished smiles. I took a deep breath, fixed my expression into something small and apologetic, and walked inside. The call came less than 10 minutes later. "Emma!" Robert Harrison's voice snapped through the phone. "Get upstairs. Now." The conference room felt colder than I remembered. Robert stood by the window. Linda sat with her arms crossed. Daniel paced back and forth like an animal that had sensed danger but didn't understand it yet. Robert turned toward me, eyes sharp. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I made a mistake." It was the first lie I told them. "You humiliated this family," Linda said. "You abandoned your responsibilities." I lowered my head. I let my emotions cloud my judgment. Daniel stopped pacing. "So you admit you were wrong?" "Yes," I answered. "I want to fix it." That was the truth, just not in the way they thought. Robert studied me for a long moment. I could almost see the calculation behind his eyes. They needed me. They hadn't replaced me. They couldn't. Operations were already slipping. Contracts delayed. Partners asking questions. "Finally," he said, "you'll come back under conditions." "Anything," I replied. More lies. More swallowing of pride. From that day on, I lived under surveillance. Every email copied. Every decision questioned. Linda hovered over my shoulder during meetings, correcting me unnecessarily, reminding me who was in control. Daniel barely spoke to me at home, treating my return like something inevitable proof that I had nowhere else to go. "You always come back," he said one night. "You don't know how to live without us." I didn't answer. At work, I did exactly what I had always done, only now I was watching. I watched numbers move where they shouldn't. I watched invoices routed through shell companies. I watched overtime hours quietly erased from employee records. And I documented everything. Each night, after everyone left, I stayed behind. I copied files carefully, slowly, sending small encrypted batches to Mark. My heart pounded every time footsteps echoed in the hallway. Every click of a mouse felt too loud. Once, Robert appeared in my doorway unexpectedly. "Working late again?" he asked. I smiled without looking up. "Always." He nodded, satisfied, and walked away. I nearly collapsed from relief. At home, the marriage finally showed its true shape. Daniel stopped pretending. He criticized the way I spoke, the way I dressed, the way I moved through rooms that no longer felt like mine. His words weren't shouted, they were worse. Calm, cutting. "You should be grateful," he told me. "Without my family, you'd be nothing." I stared at him across the dinner table and realized something terrifying. He believed it. Weeks passed. Then months. The pressure was constant. The fear was real. But underneath it all, something stronger grew resolve. Then one morning, everything broke. I was in a meeting when alarms started going off downstairs. Not literal alarms, but panic. Voices rose. People rushed past glass walls. Someone shouted, "Federal agents!" My blood ran cold. Men and women in dark jackets flooded the building, holding warrants. Computers were seized, documents boxed up, employees whispered in terror. Robert's face drained of color. "What is this?" he demanded. "This is an outrage." I stayed seated, hands folded, my expression perfectly blank. Daniel found me later, shaking. "Emma," he whispered. "What's happening?" I met his eyes calmly. "I don't know." Another lie. Within days, the news exploded. Financial misconduct, labor violations, systemic fraud. The Harrison name, once untouchable, was everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Robert was detained. Linda was questioned. The board collapsed. Daniel showed up at my door that night, wild-eyed. "You did this," he accused. "You destroyed my family." I looked at him and felt nothing. "No," I said evenly. "I told the truth." The divorce papers came a week later. Quiet, clean, final. I signed them without hesitation. As I walked away from the life I had once begged to be accepted into, I realized something profound. They had told me to choose between work and family, but what they never considered was that I might choose myself. And once I did, the empire that fed on my silence could no longer survive. The fallout was faster than I expected. Within weeks, Harrison Group stopped pretending everything was fine. Clients pulled contracts, partners demanded explanations, employees whispered in hallways that suddenly felt too loud, too exposed. The polished confidence that once filled the building evaporated, replaced by fear and suspicion. Robert Harrison was the first to fall publicly. His name appeared in the headlines next to words the family had spent decades avoiding: investigation, fraud, violations. He released a statement claiming misunderstanding and betrayal. Linda followed with interviews that blamed disloyal staff and outside interference. They never said my name. They didn't have to. Daniel did. He came to see me late one evening, unannounced, his tie loosened, his confidence stripped away. He looked smaller than I remembered, like a man who had lost the ground beneath his feet. "You planned this," he said the moment I opened the door. "All this time, you were planning it." I didn't invite him in. I didn't need to. "I told the truth," I replied. "That's all." He laughed bitterly. "You think that makes you innocent? You destroyed everything we built." I held his gaze, steady and calm. "We didn't build it together, Daniel. I carried it, and you let them use me." His jaw tightened. "You could have protected us. You chose not to." I shook my head. "No, I chose not to lie anymore." I induced. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, that he might finally see what he had done or failed to do. Instead, he said quietly, "My parents say you owe us, after everything we gave you." That was when I understood there was nothing left to save. "I don't owe anyone my silence," I answered. "Especially not at the cost of my father's dignity." He left without another word. The legal process moved on without drama from my side. I cooperated fully, provided what was asked, answered questions honestly. The investigators didn't need theatrics, facts were enough. Robert and Linda fought hard. Lawyers, delays, public denials, but evidence doesn't disappear just because you wish it would. The company was fined heavily. Leadership was removed. Harrison Group was placed under strict oversight, its once glorious reputation permanently damaged. Daniel filed for divorce shortly after. There were no arguments over property, no emotional appeals. The marriage had hollowed out long before the papers were signed. What surprised me wasn't how easy it was to let go, but how light I felt afterward. One afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. "You ruined us. Was it worth it?" I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. "Yes." Then I blocked the number. I didn't celebrate their downfall. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was quieter and deeper. Relief. For the first time in years, my life wasn't dictated by fear or obligation. I slept through the night. I ate meals without checking my phone. I stopped bracing myself for the next demand, the next threat disguised as family expectations. Ableting. I visited my father's grave again before leaving Ohio. I didn't stay silent, I told him softly. "I hope that counts for something." The wind moved through the trees, gentle and steady. I chose to believe he would have been proud, not because I won, but because I finally stood upright. The empire that once towered over me had fallen, and I realized something important in its ruins. I had never been weak. I had just been surrounded by people who needed me to believe I was. That chapter was over. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like something I had to survive. It felt like something I could build. I didn't rebuild my life overnight. Healing doesn't work that way. For a long time after everything ended, the marriage, the company, the constant pressure, I woke up expecting my phone to ring with another demand, another crisis, another voice telling me I owed them more. But the calls never came. And slowly, I learned how to breathe again. I moved into a small apartment on my own. No marble countertops, no floor-to-ceiling windows, just quiet mornings and sunlight through ordinary curtains. I cooked for myself. I took walks without checking emails. I really slept for the first time in years. Using my experience, I started a consulting firm focused on ethical operations and employee protection, transparent systems, fair labor practices, clear accountability. The kind of company I once needed but never had. Clients came slowly at first, then steadily. People trusted me not because of a powerful last name, but because I understood how easily ambition could turn into exploitation. I didn't promise miracles. I promised honesty. And that was enough. My brother, Mark, stayed close. We talked often, sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing at all. On weekends, we visited our father's grave together. We didn't cry every time. Sometimes we just sat in silence. "I think he'd like who you are now," Mark said once. I smiled. "I hope so." One afternoon, months later, I received an email from a former Harrison Group employee. "Thank you," it read. "Because of what you did, we finally got our unpaid wages. People like me were afraid to speak up. You did it for us." I closed my laptop and let the moment sink in. That was when I knew I had made the right choice. Not because they fell. Not because I walked away. But because I refused to become like them. I don't hate my ex-husband's family. Hate would mean they still had power over me. What I feel instead is distance, clarity, finality. They once told me to choose between work and family. They never imagined I would choose dignity. Today, my life is quieter. Smaller in the ways that matter less. Fuller in the ways that matter more. I work hard, but I stop. I care, but I don't disappear. I give, but not at the cost of myself. And when I think back to the woman I used to be, exhausted, obedient, afraid to ask for 4 days to bury her father, I want to reach back through time and tell her this: you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. I chose family. I chose truth. I chose myself. And for the first time, that choice finally feels like home.